hemophilia, okay? So again, this is where you get your file from, which is PIL, but you don't see it here, okay? But it's in hemophilia because it's dealing with blood. And of course, hem, dealing with blood actually, is also a chemical, right? Or deals with chemical, like hem, ham, cam, all right? And the O, of course, is dealing with the olfactor. All right, the olfactor is something that's lacking on the file. Okay, so, and we know that O is considered to be what? The universal or omniversal donor. All right, but you've never heard anybody use the term omniversal. Okay, and that is because of the omniversatility of the blood. All right, which for the most part, most melanin dominant people carry the O positive blood. Also, in addition to which, they've never mentioned or never said anything in regards to that particular blood type lending to a cure for most of the current viruses or diseases. The reason being is because of the fact that it doesn't have any antigens, okay? So subsequently, when you are transfusing the blood from the donor to the recipient, okay, there are no, again, antigens. So it doesn't cause any clumping or any agglutination, all right? So again, like I said, the O positive blood, which most melanin-dominant people carry, just for the record, is now on the black market, though they haven't said anything, okay, and it's being sold to the highest bidder. This is why they call it the blood of the prophets, because certain individuals are in fact profiting off of your blood as we speak, okay? And, which again, you can see the interchangeability of the language, prophet, prophet, okay? Which phonetically are the same, okay? Also, homonyms, okay? Whereas they're spelled different, but they sound the same and have a different meaning. Unlike homophones. Homophones are words that are spelled the same, but have different meanings and have the same sound. Okay? Okay. So, like I said, this blood type, like I said, is now on the black market, largely because, like I said, of the high concentrations of plasma proteins that most of you carry, which is also, how can I say, you're of the green bloodline, okay, or the royal bloodline. It is no coincidence or accident as to why they call themselves blue bloods, all right, which is supposed to be royalty, that kind of thing, but it is an open admittal to the fact that, again, there's something lacking on the file, okay, or germ file, all right? Were there any questions before I go any further? Okay. Okay. So again, you can see some of the connections with the, like I said, the phonetics and the interchangeability of the vowels and the consonants. Now, to take it a step further, how many of you have recently seen the new series on WB called Buffy the Vampire Slayer? Okay. Well, you've heard about it if you haven't seen it. Okay. Well, okay. This takes you into the area of dealing with blood. Why? Because if you recall throughout the history of television or movies, etc., you have movies like, you know, Count Dracula, etc., which, of course, Count Dracula was also another term for blood count, all right? And Dracula is also another term for Dracoculus, which is a parasite, okay? And is it not true or a fact that, I mean, even according to how the story goes or how it reads, whether you're reading a book or watching TV or what have you, that this individual feeds off of other people, all right, who basically have blood. Of course, they never get into the fact that it is a particular blood type, all right? In addition to which, this would make this parasite an ectoparasitic or as well as an endoparasitic parasite, okay, that feeds off of this blood. to keep itself alive. But how can that be when in fact it is considered to be living dead, all right, or of the living dead? And in addition to which, one of the other reasons as to why he needed the blood was to give it, him or her, physical immortality, okay, or what they call eternal life, that kind of thing, so they could live perpetually. But again, like I said, going back to Buffy the Vampire Slayer, it was just another way of saying, let me write this down first. Buffy the Vampire Slayer is just another term for laser vein piercing, which is precisely what's going on today, okay? And how is this being done? Okay, because, well, first of all, even before I go any further, when you go back to the Dracula story, what happened? When he or she, the vampire, took the blood from the other individual, or the victim, what did they do? They pierced the vein, did they not? Okay, fine. But now that we're in the age of technology, you don't need to do it that way, all right? In other words, meaning that you don't need a needle, as many of you know, whereas they're using technology, laser, for example, to pierce the vein, okay? So this is basically what laser vein piercing is, but that you can see the connection through the language, okay? Because you have vampire, okay? And if you look at P-I-R-E, is also P-I-E-R, or the interchangeability of the word, okay? Pyre, peer, which is short for, of course, piercing. Then you have vam is also vein, because M and N are interchangeable, okay? And then you have laser. How so? Here it is, L-A-Y-S-E-R, okay? But you don't need the Y because of the sound, okay? It's just like, for example, if I were to spell belong, how would you spell belong? Okay, B-E-L-O-N-G. But you don't need the E, because the B has the sound itself, or carries the sound itself, which B is also D, which is also T, because they're consonants, so therefore they're interchangeable. But again, nobody ever says anything, okay? And for obvious reasons, because don't want you to know, okay? And so subsequently through the language, your landing is being gauged, all right? Okay? So, again, you can see why I have termed it, or one of many terms, the molecular biographical sciences of language, because you're getting into the molecular structure of the language and how the language works and what the connections are, or the loom, as they say, or that which appears dimly, or appears, how can I say, dimly in magnified shape or form, okay? That is actually what that is, or what the loom is, okay, which takes you into the sciences of the room, okay? Which, just for the record, okay, takes into the sciences of the rune. The rune, for those of you, I don't know how familiar you are with the rune or its history or origins, from whence it came from, initially stemmed, of course, from, as did everything else, every other writing and so-called language, stemmed from the hieroglyphs, of course, as you know, or the metaneta. And so the rune initially was a form of non-phonetic writing, much like the hieroglyphs, all right, which has been used and is used in Europe, okay, which stems from the, or actually evolved in the Teutonic languages, all right, which your Teutonic languages, you have Scandinavian, something like that. You have Scandinavian, You have German. Okay. You have, what is it, Old English, what they call Old English. You have Celtic. Okay, then you have a few others. You have Welsh, okay? And in the German, the rune is called Raunen or Ronen, okay? Which is just another, well, its definition or refinition as I call it, because I don't deal with anything that's deafening, is that Raunen means to whisper, or something that is in secret, or secret lore, okay, or a unit encapsulating a wealth of secret lore, okay? So, the rune initially started out, as I said, as being non-phonetic. They were just signs or symbols, all right, which started out as what they call the, let me just erase this. The rune Hord, all right, which had something like 33 characters, okay, that eventually became the Northumbrian and so forth on down to the Scandinavian, which ultimately the Scandinavian also called the Elder Foothawk now has 16, all right, which this particular rune is used now in phonetics, okay, still dealing with symbols, but now used in phonetics, whereas initially the rune Hord was non-phonetic, okay, or non-alphabetic as they call it, okay. Now, the science of the rune is very interesting. Why is that? Because as we talked about how things are hidden in secret, it has been used through the language with signs and symbols that you find in mathematics, interestingly enough. Why? Because you're dealing with, say for example, okay, that is called, what is that, the 28th rune of the 33, called Ior, or Ior, okay, which basically deals with the dual nature of matter, okay, and why is that? Because you're dealing with, like I said, the left, which would be, yes, left, and the right side of the brain, okay, which deals with polarity, all right? And if you recall with the hieroglyphs of the Meta-Netter, it was a science of its own where individuals that completely overstood or comprehended the hieroglyphs of the Meta-Netter were able to bring about polarization of the brain by using the left and right hemispheres of the brain, okay, which was brought together by the cerebral cortex, right, which is connected with the optic nerve or the occipital lobe, again, of the cerebral cortex. So, I say this because these individuals who have been using this throughout the centuries, even up until the present day, very much understand this in its relationship, again, to the other sciences, which math is one of those sciences, which is nothing more than a method, which is math, right? Math, okay, which is where you get Methodist from, okay? So again, when they talk about the different denominations and all of this spookism and hoopla, that's really what they're talking about, okay? And how, in fact, the math or mathematics was applied, or is being applied, okay? So again, when we get back to, like I said, them comprehending the, how can I say, the molecular structure of the room, you're dealing with angles, right? Different types of angles, which deals with geometry, okay? Which takes you into the areas of divination. I know I'm jumping around here, but soon you will see the connections, okay? Which takes you into the areas of divination. Now, I'm sure some of you are familiar with what they call divination or divinatory practices, okay? Like you have the geomancy, the pegomancy, the necromancy, and so forth, okay? Which the geomancy basically deals with observing objects, okay, particles, etc., in the earth, okay, be it in or on the earth, and watching the patterns, how they move, how they form, etc., okay, which we know that in nature there are cycles that happen, which cycles is also equivalent to patterns, right, that every so often you have, for example, the seasons that happens in a particular pattern or cycle. So these individuals also comprehend the patterns or observing patterns that exist within the cell structure of most other things. And when I say most other things, I mean from the galactic to the molecular. And in this case, dealing with biomolecular, dealing with biology, dealing with the very matrix of what makes you who and what you are. Okay? Do you follow? Are you with me? Good. Very good. So again, like I said, they've studied this to a science, and not only have they been able to utilize it through the language, but the language again becomes a way by which they can ultimately begin applying things, okay? Because, like I said, the angling goes from the theoretical aspect to the application thereof. Okay, for example, just to give you a clearer picture, if you're dealing with, a lot of you remember Darwin, right? And Darwin came up with all of these theories about evolution, this, that, and the other, you know, da-da-da. And so these theories later became applied theory, all right, over an extended period of time, okay? And that his successors, all right, would then use his theories and then apply them as they saw fit, okay? Which dealt with, like I said, forms of math or calculus. Why calculus? Because it deals with what? Calculating, right? Or dealing with operators, or what they call differential operators, which is simply something that operates, and finding out or probing exactly how it operates and studying it over a period of time, looking at the patterns. Again, getting back to divination. Okay, so again, these divinatory practices, as I said, has been applied to the cell structure of man, or human or human beings. All right? And when I say human beings, I'm referring to all beings, because they've been studying all life forms to find out more about you. Is this not true? Okay? They've been studying, like I said, bees, ants, flies, turtles, doves, I mean, you name it. Okay? And studying their migratory habits, their mating habits, finding out whether or not they're nocturnal, solar, all right, and the corresponding parasites. Okay? So once they were able to do that, they could then begin just don't have enough room. They could then begin breaching your file, all right? Which takes us into the melonic file, all right? Which is that super substructure, all right, if you're dealing with subatomic particles that ultimately makes up what you know to be today as melanin. All right, because you're dealing with other components or aspects of energy, okay, that manifests itself, in matter or physical form, okay? So again, like I said, breaching your file. So studying the patterns so that they can ultimately find out how, in fact, they can master certain waves of energy, all right? And in mastering those waves of energy, it would enable them to master the sciences of time travel, okay, transvectorization or shape-shifting, as some of you may know the term or have seen in movies, sci-fi movies, etc. Okay? So, like I said, breaching your file by any means necessary. Okay? Okay. So, like I said, well, first, even before I go any further, are you with me as far as the basic connections with the runes and the divination and so forth? Okay, very good. Because this is very, very important in comprehending, like I said, what is going on right now, what's happening, like I said, with the laser vein piercing, which has also been used with a science known as nanotechnology. Because nanotechnology is just another term for what? Dealing with nano or nanometers, which is a measurement that is like super microscopic. Okay, exactly. All right, so nanotechnology has been used to, how can I say, carry swarms of molecular size machines that they inject into the bloodstream, and in many cases they carry deadly viruses with them. Okay, and this is something that's going on right now in many of the hospitals. All right, that even though most of you now are conscious and you know the deal and you know what's happening, there are a lot of your friends and loved ones who still put their faith and trust in the beast or whatever other term or name you want to call them. All right, this is real. Okay, so again, you need to alert them about certain things that are going on, like I said, with the Pilgrim thing. Why I say Pilgrim? Because Pilgrim became Project Germfile. That became the project, the long-term ongoing project, which again goes back to the second slave trade, which is the most prolific because, again, they needed your blood to arrest their condition or situation. Or even going back to the encounter or first contact, as in your Star Trek movie, all right, the first contact with the prodigious or indigenous people. When they first came in contact with them, they saw them and said, damn, how is it that these people can, command the skies and, or have command of the skies, the ocean, the land, the whole nine, you know what I mean? And, we've got to find out the source of their power. So, they, as they do with everything else, they get on your good side, they live with you, and eat your food or whatever else, and get you drunk, okay? Because, just for the record, that is their beverage of choice, okay? If you go back to the time of, in Europe, during the Inquisition, okay, and so forth, what were they drinking over there? Nobody ever said pass the water. Exactly, pass the ale or the beer or the wine or the liquor, whatever it was they were drinking, all right? So, we have early cases of substance abuse, all right? Matter of fact, even most of the children at that time were drinking, all right? It was legal, all right? And if you go back even further, during the time of the Vikings, okay, whenever they went out on a conquest or whatever, or and they won a battle or whatever, they came back to the water hole, what they call the water hole, but ironically enough, they were drinking beer and alcohol and liquor and wine or whatever. And if you gave them something that wasn't considered to be authentic, what happened? They spit it out. You know what I mean? Well, what is this? Because that tells you that there's something drastically wrong. Anytime that water is considered to be, poison, what's up with that? You know what I mean? When it's water that helps to bring about balance. You know what I mean? And this is what we're talking about, balance. So this is why I went through, or why I'm going through the whole thing with the language, so that you can understand or comprehend, you know, the connections with the language to bring about balance. Because right now you're just dealing with the cognitive part of your brains. You're not dealing with the so-called intuitive side. And if you are, they're few and far between. Right? You can count those individuals on one hand, if we're being honest with ourselves. So this is what we're trying to do, bring polarity between, like I said, or polarization rather, between the left and the right hemispheres of the brain. And rest assured that through the languages, or through the loom of language, and the runes, and understanding the runes, going back all the way to the hieroglyphs, all right, it'll actually spark certain things within you. Or as some people call DNA explosions, all right? And actually begin to connect the dendrites of the psychic genetic blueprint, or that which is already on your file, okay? This is why individuals are desperately, all right, trying to breach your file, okay? This is why you always hear stuff about, or the term life, life, life. Life is nothing more than the file, and what's on the file, and how it can be accessed, all right? This is why we're now in the age of computers, because it's the next or closest thing to the actual human or human way of accessing information on the file. Okay? Why do you think they came up with computer viruses and all of this? Okay? Which initially, that's what AIDS was. All right? It was a computer virus, which laid the groundwork for the actual organism or invader, all right, that they used to breach the immune system. All right? And break down the 3 lines of defenses. And that whatever information, just for the record, that they give you in regards or about AIDS, you know, is the same old rhetoric. AZT, protease inhibitors, this, that, and the other. And if they do give you any information in regards to, you know, like how it works, what the causes of it are, etc., or even dealing with T cells, they only give you surface information. They don't tell you that there are at least 6 different T cells and what their functions are. You know, you have helper T cells, receptor T cells, all right? What they call hypersensitivity T cells, cytotoxic T cells, which actually release what they call cytolytic proteins that actually kill or destroy the infected cell. Okay? Because what happens is that initially, and I know I'm getting off a little, but that we're on the subject of it, of AIDS, what happens is that, or what happened when they were working with the host, or chose the host to work with, they used, well, how many of you, I'm sure all of you remember Star Trek, right? If not the original, Next Generation, on down the line, the Voyager, they used what you may recall as the cloaking device, okay? To cloak or disguise the invader. Okay? So, once they did that, it would enter the immune system, get into the immune system, and, you know, hide out in the cells, and would stay there for an extended period of time until the ribosomes, which reads the incoming information, would follow the instructions and begin replicating it. Just like it replicates any other enzyme or any other hormone, etc., it would also replicate the virus as well. But I don't want to stay on that too much. But like I said, backtracking is that this is really what it's all about. You know what I mean? So again, we're trying to bring balance. But I want to get into some of the quote-unquote rules as to how to open up files. Okay? And when I say open up files, is that when it's all said and done, and when you fully comprehend the science of what they call, or what I call rather, helixogramming, which was initially lexigramming, which stemmed from anagrams. I know some of you might be familiar with anagrams, all right? Which is some of what I was doing up here. However, anagrams is just like an intellectual game. You understand, where certain people just get off on, you know, just playing around with words. And it's not about that. Whereas lexigramming, for example, even before I get to helixogramming, lexigramming deals with probing behind anagrams, all right, and tapping into areas of information, spiritual information or ethereal information and so forth, or information that's been forgotten for centuries, that you can now begin to access, okay? And helixogramming is just the next level to that, or an upward spiral of that, okay? Are there any questions so far? Okay, good. All right, but let me get a little more specific about that, okay? Like, for example, okay, I said, helixogramming, all right? Which basically, let's just say, for example, you see a word or you see a sentence. We'll just start with words or a name, okay? Let's just say, no, that is still. What's this movie out now called Men in Black? Okay. Now, there's a whole nother message behind that. Okay? When you look at Men in Black, first you're looking at all the words that you can make up out of this phrase or sentence. Okay? And you're constructing the words based on the letters that are here. Okay? That's dealing with lexigramming. Okay, helixogramming is a whole other thing, and I'll get into that in a minute. But lexigramming, you're constructing words like, for example, you would see the word lack, right? Or, for that part, the word melanin is in there. Okay? Then you also have the word blame. Okay? You also have the word lab. Okay, and so forth. All right, so what happens is that, just for the record, when you're helixogramming a name, a word, or sentence, or a paragraph, and ultimately, you'll reach the level of being able to just sit down and see a book and decode it like that. Okay? But one of the rules is that it can't have any more than 5 vowels. Why is that? Because if it has more than 5 vowels in the lexigram, or the helixogram for that part, it doesn't want to be lexigrammed, or it doesn't want to be probed. Why is that? Because you'll wind up making new words out of every letter in the alphabet. You know what I mean? And you'll spend years trying to decode something. Okay? So again, like I said, you want to have at least 3, 2, or let's say no more than 3 vowels. Okay? You can have 4 vowels, but 4 vowels is pushing it a little, but are permissible. Okay? And like I said, also, when you are making the new words, like I said, melanin, black, lack, lab, etc., you notice how you're only using the letters that are in the phrase. It's not like you're just creating letters or making up letters like adding Z and all of that in there, okay, and not knowing really where you're going. So that's basically part of what lexigramming is, okay? And then once you've done that and you've constructed your words, whether it be 10, 20, 30 words or whatever, okay, you basically trust your intuition, all right, which is something that most of us, again, don't do. Trust your intuition to the degree where you can actually see where it's going based on the words that you have down on paper, all right? And you'll see how it'll begin unveiling information and unraveling itself, okay? This is what lexigramming is. Now, helixogramming deals with a whole nother aspect because you're dealing with other languages as well. Like when or dealing with the etymology or the root of words. You know, for example, like the word run, okay? The word run is a Old Celtic word, okay? Which comes from Old Celtic. Or like the word will. The word will comes from the Syriac or Syriac Arabic, okay? Or the word mash also comes from the Arabic, like Mashiach, which means will. Okay? So again, you know that the English language is a conglomeration of other languages, all right? Or a culmination of languages. So there's nothing pure about it. So that in and of itself tells you that you have to start looking at, other languages or the connections, etc. Okay? And start borrowing. Or you can even borrow other letters because of the sounds. Okay? Like, for example, in the German, the V, right, would be equivalent to our F. Okay? Like you have Vater, or father, right? Okay? Or even like in the German, you have the word for water is Wasser. All right? The T and the S sounds. Okay? Or the T and the S letters, I'm sorry. Okay? So, you get the idea. Or even like, for example, if you're using the word berry, all right, in your lexigram or helixogram, you can actually borrow the V from Spanish, which becomes very. But you don't need the second R to spell it. Just like doom, or the word moon, or moonlight. You don't need the second O. All right? A lot of that stuff is just, just fillers. It has nothing to do with anything. It's just to confuse you. Okay? Also, just another rule, if you will, about lexigramming or helixogramming. It is recommended that you have no more than 15 different or separate letters in the word, name, or paragraph. Okay? That you are lexigramming or helixogramming. Okay? Because like I said, again, you'll be lexigramming every word and every letter, in the alphabet, or the Roman alphabet, as it were. Okay? So, before I go any further, are there any questions? Are you unclear about anything? Or if you are clear, you might just have questions in general. Yeah.
When you're lexigramming or helixogramming, and you go into interchanging, like how you're doing with Pilgrim and Germ and all that?
Yeah, no, with lexigramming you can't, all right? Because lexigramming only deals with, like I said, the English language, that and that alone, all right? Which you can still probe the word, phrase, or sentence, or what have you, to get other information that ordinarily would not be there, okay? But it only deals with the English language. However, if you're dealing with helixogramming, like I said, the upward spiral, which takes you to another level, you're using all combinations. It's just like, trying to figure out a mathematical problem. Including other languages, all right? If, in fact, they're needed, okay? Or you need to borrow or something like that. Or need to see, where the origin of the word or the letter or whatever comes from. Yeah.
W, what W, what the origin of that come from? Like it was like 2 U's.
Exactly. Exactly. I really don't know too much about that at this time, all right? But I can't really elaborate on that at this time. But that is accurate, though. Yeah.
What was that? Oh, about W?
He wanted to know about the W, which was 2 U's or 2 V's, because they were interchangeable. Or, in the ancient times, the V was the U, or it was the other way around. That I'm not too familiar with and not too accurate on. Yeah.
In the esoterical language, the V is the Roman number for 5.
Exactly.
And 5 is supposed to be the number of man. And when you put 2 V's together, it becomes a W or U, which means you have a physical U here and an invisible U.
Yeah. On both, on 2 planes, on the plane of force, or what they call the ethereal plane, and the physical plane. Yeah, of the 7. Yeah. Are there any other questions before I go any further?
Yes, the helixogramming. Would these be type of codes and words that can bring about a change in one's molecular structure?
Oh, that's a very good question. Yeah, that's an excellent question. dealing with certain languages, as you know, with the English language, you're dealing with tones, vibrations, frequencies, and so forth. All right. So what happens is that when you use certain words, like a lot of people say, well, that don't matter. You know what I'm saying? I'm just using words or whatever, or letters.